How did I set the fastest time at the Fred Whitton, the UK's toughest Sportive? Me, little old Josh from the forest, against some of the UK's best hill climbers? Well, you'll have to watch to find out. I'm obviously very focused on the road racing and being the best I can possibly be, and the Fred was also a big goal for me. Mainly to test my limits, and we did just that. First off, I want to thank the organisers and everyone involved in making this event as spectacular as it is. From the videos created beforehand, allowing me to gather as much information as possible, to just the support out on the road. I also done this event under a charity entry, so most of my £318 entry goes towards the Duddon and Furness Mountain Rescue Team, who were out on the course, and so glad I can support in a more small way. This makes setting the fastest time even sweeter. The route, 175 kilometres with 3,500 metres of climbing, widely regarded as the UK's toughest Sportive. Chapeau to everyone who took on this amazing route, from 5 hours to 8 hours, however long it took. What an amazing ride.
If I need it, I'll stop at the feeds, grab it and catch back on or something or whatever. I think I've got enough food, but we'll see. I left one of my bottles at home, but luckily I had one in the car. I've just lost me 2 watts of aero gains on the one bottle. Oh dear. That's a good point. Fucking wax chains. Don't want dodgy day on the day. No.
I created a reel a week before the Fred, outlining my ambitious goal to achieve sub 5 hours 30 minutes and post the fastest time of the day. Seeing the likes of Ed Laverack and Andrew Feather on the start line, plus a few other big names, it was going to be hard, but I was confident in my fitness and what I could achieve. Taking my new Alves bike out to tackle the 105 miles, I chose aerodynamics and disc brakes over weight and rim brakes. Set up with bottles and saddlebag, I ran on the day, it's just over 9 kilos. Far from light, but clearly paid off. As for gearing and setup, I used a 54-36 up front, sorry Shimano, and an 11-34 cassette, which worked flawlessly. I entered this event with the intentions of doing this solo, but luckily found out Dave, who beat me at last year's Band of Climbers event, was also doing it, and we linked up together to ride. Setting off with just 4 of us, me, Dave, Kirk, and a fellow no-pins rider, Rowan, who we found at the start, but unfortunately lost on the struggle. Starting off with a bit of stomach discomfort, it was far from ideal, but the legs felt good to push and didn't affect too much. Probably over-carbed the night before and on the morning, but did eventually settle after a few hours, just in time for Hardknott. The struggle was chaos, avoiding riders left, right and centre. Rocco passed us on the struggle, but ultimately went too hard early on and saw him in the next valley. It was quite funny. Going up the struggle, I had flashbacks to the National Hill Climb Championships a few years ago. What a lovely experience, but this time I can honestly say it was much nicer. Actually being able to take in the views, it was brilliant. What a climb. The last section is savage, but again, was so much nicer and even had people cheering on. It was brilliant. This time though, we averaged 312 watts for around 19 minutes to get to the top of the struggle, knowing not to start too hard as we had a big day ahead. Between the foot of Kirkstone to the next climb Matterdale, we averaged 43.8 kilometres an hour and 240 watts. A very fast section, although a twig got in Dave's wheel, so thought he had a puncture. Thankfully not, and got going again. We also picked up a few other riders along the way, including Rocco and one other from 360 Cycling, who I raced against the week prior. Dave had also organised a few riders, so we picked up James after the Kirkstone descent, who pulled a decent shift. We also picked up Ollie, not GCN, after Matterdale, who done a solid shift for us on the flat parts, especially on the A66. From the bottom of Matterdale along the A66 to the bottom of Honister, we averaged 40.7 kilometres an hour and 215 watts. Plenty of riders passed and very strung out along this section. The plan was around 320 watts on the climbs and poor turns on the flat around 250 to 300 watts. I think it's a bit misunderstood. Our group was fairly small and only two or three of us actually doing bits on the front, including myself. After the A66, it was fast into Keswick and then onto the steep slopes of Honister, where to my surprise someone cheered on my name. 2.1 kilometres at 10%, but a kilometre section at 15% average. It's a tough one. Insert power data. No, not meant to read that part. The descent of Honister was pretty treacherous and we lost James and Ollie at this point, so continued with just the four of us. Newlands came pretty fast after, avoiding the feed, which was pretty tough actually, as my two lots of 600ml bottles were going down fast. I originally intended to at least use one feed stop to top up the bottles, but in terms of jabs and bars, I had enough for the whole ride. 1.9 kilometres at over 10%, another hard one, and stopping for a feed just before this is cruel. Why didn't they put it at the top? Another reason stopping wasn't an option. We saw GCN ahead of us near the top of the climb, could tell by the big group of red and the camera motos. They must have went pretty fast through the valley between Newlands and Honister as we didn't see them, and was a pretty narrow but fast lane. Bet the cars were loving it coming the other way, it was pretty tight. Then came Windlatter, a nice climb at only 3 kilometres and 7% average. After seeing Dan Evans stop on the side of the road for a water tot-up, we then saw GCN and Feather at the top, also getting some supplies. We ploughed on, although their group would have been nice. We picked up Ollie, again not GCN, back up somehow at the top of Windlatter, who then done a decent shift, which was much welcome after just me, Dave, pulling alongside Rocco for what felt like a while. A draggy 10 kilometre section at 240 watts average for 20 minutes. Leading into Fangs, a short but punchy 1 kilometre at 7%. And on to Conger Climb, a lovely 2 kilometres and a half at 3%. It felt flat by this point. By this point, we had been caught by the almighty Feather, making things rather interesting, and the excitement and thoughts turned to how Hardknott would play out. Before that though, we had Carlton and Coldfowl to deal with, but again, feeling pretty tame, just over and under 5% average. Having to surge ahead for a stop for a pee, saving every last bit of weight for Hardknott. I'd done some nice pulls over the top and then even had Feather on the front, but this time on a descent. Unbelievable. Nearly watching him getting taken out by a kamikaze sheep twice was mental and ruined our descent a little, having to slow right down. Love how carefree sheep are. The next 10 miles after the descent was pretty chill. 210 watts average, and all talking at this point as we got stuck behind the tractor. The lead-in, everyone knew what was coming. The infamous Hardknott, the moment I'd been waiting for. The point on the route where limits had to be pushed and where the fastest would have to be made from our reduced four-man group. Early on, straight from the bottom, Feather set the pace. Just after the cattle grid, it was just the two of us. The first ramps of 500 metres at 17% average we done in 3 minutes 21 seconds with a power of 387 watts and peaking over 500 watts. Known as the cruising section, 900 metres long at 10.5%, Andrew thought it would be a good time to have a chat. Not backing down to the challenge or mind games, we had a laugh.
I reckon about 63.
Right.
Heaviest I've ever been. I was
Really?
55 for the Nationals 4 years ago.
Right. How old are you?
22.
Shit got real again with the last 500 metre wall approaching, again averaging over 17%, but with ramps trying to break the legs over 25%. Words can't describe how ridiculous it is looking at this wall. 2 minutes 48 seconds at 394 watts, I was clinging on, but managing to probably do my best ever performance. With 140 kilometres in the legs and over 4 hours, I held 362 watts over the full climb and just shy of 380 watts normalised or 6.2 watts per kilo. Considering it's a steep ramp pushing over 500 watts at points, then chill, then another steep ramp again over 500 watts for some more fun, I'm pretty chuffed with that. I must say, although I've worked hard to get here and still a long way to go, and Andrew's probably not on his best hill climb form right now, it was incredible to keep up and ride with this legend. Just what a memory and crazy experience. But this is where I want to be, climbing with the best. Hardknott's descent is short but testing. After pushing the body to new limits, I nearly overcooked every bend as the back tyre failed to grip on the bumpy surface. Then came probably the hardest point of the whole course. Legs still full of lactic and plenty of kilometres in the bag, the valley started to bite, very draggy, into the foot of Rhinos pushing over 310 watts. Then the fun began again. Rhinos pass, short but sharp, my final test. Feather again setting the pace, I really had to dig deep here. And although he was happy pulling me through the valley and helping me to a fast time, this really pushed me. Another 6 minutes at 360 watts and the last 1 minute 45 seconds at 400. I reached my mental finish line at the top and was over the moon by this point. What a relief. Little did I know, Andrew's also pretty handy at descending, so plenty of concentration required on the steep and savage descent, with poor road surfaces and shaking the bones and providing, let's say, minimal grip. The bike and bearings crying, we made it to the bottom. A bit too fast to be honest, could have done with a few more minutes recovery. 3 minutes 32 seconds for the descent, 43 kilometres an hour average. The last climb, bleed time. 2.5 kilometres at 4.3%, but deceptive as the first kilometre is pretty steep till you reach the cattle grid, where it rolls and punches all the way to the top. Another testing descent with some sharp, nasty switchbacks, fully off the back of my saddle, just about making every corner. You think result, I've made it, but a long, fast 10 miles awaits. As previously mentioned, due to Feather starting 7 minutes before us, virtually I was ahead. And credit where it's due, after Hardknott, I'd done a few pulls, but this guy done some monster turns and towed me on home. A small stop for some sheep crossing the road and one nearly missed left-hander, but we made it, crossing the line in a finish time of just 5 hours 23 minutes and 14 seconds, or 5 hours 22 minutes and 55 seconds according to my Garmin. Just saying. The full stats were 242 watts average, 279 watts normalised over the full course. Hardknott plus Rhinos and a bit between took 22 minutes with an average power of 320 watts and 350 watts normalised after 4 hours 20 in the legs. The stars aligned for me, finding Dave to ride with and a small but cooperative group worked wonders, and then having Andrew for that last 30 odd kilometres pushed me to really find so much about myself and the strength and power I've worked so hard to build over these last 10 months of going all in on cycling. The consistency, the discipline is all starting to pay off, but this is only the beginning and even scares me to think how much further I can go.
Let me get the goggles on.
But I promise I will find out. The road to pro continues. Thanks for watching, and again to everyone who made this possible. Depending on how my calendar goes, I'd love to come back. And with the right support, I truly believe sub 5 hours is possible. Thanks again for the support. Hope you enjoy. Over and out.